Eli Campbell here. One thing that makes Steamboat special is how many awe-inspiring people call our valley home. You could find yourself in line at the coffee shop next to an Olympian, or sitting on the gondola next to the founder of a world-renowned business. Our community produces and attracts the best of the best in their respective fields, but most are so humble about it you would never know. These extraordinary people are the common folk in the boat. Welcome back to Common Folk in the Boat, presented by Billo Premium Cannabis. Eli Campbell here with you, Dave Whitlinger.
How you doing? I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. It's been a wonderful summer. It's been a fast summer.
It has. I tell you, this time of year is always really interesting because it's like hurry up and get here, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, blink of an eye, kids are back in school. Yeah. And I feel like you're right. Where did the summer go?
Yeah, it's been a really fun summer. One of the things that has made it so fun is the free summer concert series. Now, we've had a couple rain out events, but the people, the hardy souls of Steamboat that have come to those shows and stayed through have gotten some great performances from Fruition and from ALO, and then you had the Kitchen Dwellers opening up. Machine performs Pink Floyd. That was a fun one, getting a little, kind of the tribute to Pink Floyd. And we've got one more show left on the calendar. It's the end of summer jam with Keller Williams doing Grateful Grass, and that is all lead into who we're going to be talking to today. It's Joe Kboudi, John Waldman, the original architects of the free summer concert series.
It's a good word, architect. I'm glad you came up with that because that's exactly I think what they've done.
Yeah, they built something from the ground up out of nothing, from the courthouse lawn to what it is now with thousands of people coming. And so I'm really excited to hear the stories that they have to tell. But before we get to that, what's Billo high on right now?
I don't know if we need to go off script much further than what you just said. I mean, honestly, Billo in general is high on music. We love live music. I know this podcast is more about the people, not so much the music, but man, if we can incorporate the two, talk music and weed. That in a nutshell. So I'm excited for this episode. That's what we're high on more than anything.
And you guys have been long supporters of the free concert series. Anytime you walk into the venue, you're walking past the Billo flags. It's been something that's been important to you. But why specifically the free concert series of the many different options out there? What is it about that one?
Well, a couple of reasons, Eli. One is that, of course, this is it's a free concert in that it's free to the people that come out to listen, but they're a nonprofit in town, just like a lot of other nonprofits. And if we're going to give money to any nonprofit, I think theirs is just as much worthy as any other. And then, I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. I mean, from the selfish standpoint of our products and our business model, it goes without saying that cannabis and music, especially live music, typically blend very well to create experiences, and that's really what we're all about. So something memorable, lasting all day, we give money to that.
Yeah, and I've always said the Free Summer Concert Series is my favorite community event year-round. I'm really excited to talk to John and Joe about what was the origin story of it and what the future is for it. So we're actually, I think we're going to raise the garage, get some fresh air in here.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, and then get them in here. So we'll be right back on Common Folk in the Boat. Welcome back to Common Folk in the Boat. I am happy to be joined by two men I've gotten the pleasure to know over many years. We've got John Waldman, Joe Kboudi. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Beautiful day in the boat.
It is a beautiful day in the boat, beautiful time of year in the boat. And one of the reasons that we want to talk to you is about the summertime and the things that you guys have helped add to that. But before we get down the road of the free concert series, I always like to talk about the origin stories of how people even came to Steamboat, to kind of find out what brought you here, why you've stayed here. So, John, why don't you start?
Yeah, I came here in the ski season of 1980-81. Was living in Boulder, had finished college, didn't know what I wanted to do. My cousin lived up here, who still lives up here. I came up, stayed in her basement for 2 weeks. Carol Gordon, and I never left.
Yeah.
And a typical Steamboat story, but that's true and how it happened.
That is typical. It is come up here for a season or a couple weeks and forget that return ticket home. So
that's right.
What about you, Joe?
Well, I came up to ski a few times, really loved it, and then decided I was going to move up here So I'm driving up here, and my car runs off the road between Kremling and Raviters Pass. So I hitched into town. I had some friends that I was staying with hitched into town, and so I'm here. I'm going, hey, we're going to a party. Do you want to go? I'm going, sure. So we went to the party, and we met all these people, and we partied for the next 10 nights in a row, and I've been partying ever since.
And that is another typical. That's actually, we had Eric Baker on the podcast, and that was a similar story where his van broke down, and he ended up just staying here.
I know it's not about me. Could I just share real quick? So my first night in Steamboat, knew I was moving here. I was in a U-Haul, didn't have a place to stay, so I pulled up to what was the Inferno at the time. It happened to be Disco Inferno night. Roll up, park my U-Haul, went into the Disco Inferno, partied all night, ended up sleeping in the back of the U-Haul because why not? Woke up the next morning to really loud engines. Turns out that's back when they did the motorcycle races around Mount Werner, and I was like stuck inside the race like crew because I never left from the night before.
It's always fun hearing the old stories of how people got here, and then of course once you got here, you're famous for starting All That Jazz back in 1977.
Yep.
And, here we are at Dusky Grouse. She's trying to sell some vinyls out of her store. It's a little different, though. Can you talk a little bit about just kind of the heyday of the record business back when people used to actually buy records and cassettes as their way to get music on demand?
Well, that was in the first store I had in the Harbor Hotel, and people would come in. Well, okay, so I had a lot of vinyl, but also I had this bin that held about 250 pieces, and I would go to these cutout houses, and I would buy what's called cutouts. Had a little cut or a hole punched in it, and you could buy it for 50 cents and $1. So I had all this jazz and all this blues and things in this box, $2.99, $3.99. Man, it was like, I mean, the cutout houses were great. Anyway, so vinyl was great. Cassettes were great. I had 8-tracks. They're out the door pretty quick and everything. And 13 years in that store, finally vinyl started to wane. And when I moved to the new store in the Old Town Square, I left the vinyl behind.
Yeah.
But as the story will continue, we picked it back up again.
Because vinyl came back around as things seem to do. But
Yes.
then, of course, into the 1990s, right before the free concert series started, I'd like to know from you guys, what was the music scene like here? I mean, we talked about the Inferno. That was around and kicking. But what was the music scene like?
I started in 1984 with Great Night Productions. And in those days, we were doing shows at the Old Town Pub, which Sean is still doing a lot of shows at. The larger shows we were doing at the Sheridan Ground Ballroom. And there were a lot of shows that played there through the mid-'80s and through the mid-'90s, maybe even the early 2000s. And they were doing things in the Inferno. And then I was still do a lot of shows in other resorts outside of Steamboat. But none of the ski resorts really had a big music scene going. And when I started, about 6 months to a year after I started, I met who became my business partner for about 25 years, David Lochran, who lives in Aspen. And he had heard when I started that I was doing some shows. Booking agents were calling him saying, hey, I've got this band, they're playing Steamboat for John Waldman at Steamboat. Do you want to book them in Aspen? So David called me one day and said, hey, maybe we should join forces and expand this to other resorts. And that's how the company started. But backtracking for 1 second, the name of Great Night Productions happened and was created in Joe Kboudi's house.
How was it his idea?
No,
or?
it wasn't his idea. There were Nancy Levin and a guy named Bones were doing some shows, a few shows at the Sheridan.
You know, Bones?
And Nancy had a job opportunity to go work for Warner Brothers Records. In those days, as you probably know, they were what were called record reps. And every Tuesday, they would want to get their ads, and they would visit the various radio stations, of which one was KFMU. Yeah. Nancy was the music director, along with the program director was a guy named Roger Mayer. And Roger had a little bit experience booking bands in Denver over time. He grew up in Denver, whatever. And Nancy was leaving town, and the station was doing some shows. So Roger came to me and said, maybe we should take this over. Ron Tarson, who at the time owned KFMU, was a huge music fan and a big supporter of live music and live shows. I knew a lot about business, and I liked music, but I didn't know a lot about the music business. Roger claimed to know more than he probably did about the music live business, but knew a lot about the, radio business and that type of thing. So anyway, that's how it started. But I had to, get incorporated. So we were meeting at Joe's house. I don't even know if you remember the story.
I don't remember.
And it was myself, Joe, and Roger, and I had to come up with a name. And I said, yeah, great night. And Roger said, yeah, Great Night Productions, but you got to do something with it. So put the K instead of the N, and that's how it started.
Very cool. And Joe had no idea until just right now.
Otherwise, you would have been collecting, royalties, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. That's how it started. I remember this vividly.
Yeah. So then, in the early 90s, you guys decide the town needs a free concert series. And it was, back then, started on the courthouse. But what was kind of the origin of that?
Well, what happened, let me, just real quick.
I got a story about that, too.
So David, my business partner, had already started, was 1 year into the Snowmass Free Summer Concert Series, which is still going on today. And so when I learned how he was doing it, I talked to Joe about, hey, we should do something like this in Steamboat. And so in the early days,
I talked to John about it.
right, well, one of us talked to each other about it.
One of you is going to take credit.
I'll give you my version.
So Joe hustled to get the money from, various businesses and the Downtown Business Association, whatever. And that's how and I booked the bands. And that's how we started the first season, which I think was it 4 shows?
2 shows.
2 shows.
Robin Ford and Wind Machine.
Right.
So what's your version of this?
Well, pretty much the same, but Walmart had come in and they were giving the Downtown Business Association $25,000 to mitigate what was happening. And so I'm on the board and I'm going, we need to put this money, we need to bring free music here and everything. No, so I'm going, God. So I've talked to John, I'm going, John, we need to do this, let's start this. And then I went out and raised $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 from all the merchants in town. I just went out, free music, we got to do this. And so we raised, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. And then we started, with Robin Ford and Wind Machine. Those were our first shows.
Yeah, and that was back in 1993. Was it always an idea to make it a continual series, or was it just kind of, we're going to figure out this first year? And
Always to, and it grew quickly, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the next year we did 3 or 4. And at some point we were doing 5. 1 year we did 6.
And the first ones were on the courthouse lawn downtown.
Yes.
Is there a specific show that came along where you say, we need to move this? This is much bigger than
There was. It was probably the Spin Doctors. And, and J.D. Hayes, who was the police chief at the time, came to me after that show because we literally were using white plastic baseball fence from Triple Crown to block off one lane of Lincoln Avenue.
I mean, they were,
so that people could, because it was overflowing.
People were in the streets.
They were literally in the streets. So JD said, after that season, he said, we got to figure something out. And Jeff Nelson, who ran Parks and Rec at the time, said, hey, what about Howelson Hill? And so that's where we've been ever since. Although for a period of time, we were doing a couple of shows a year up at the ski area on Headwall, which looked a little different at that time because it was nothing but a sort of a graded hill. There wasn't anything up there.
Right.
So a number of years we did 2 shows a year there.
I'm sorry, I've lost track of the time. So how many years did it run at the courthouse and then before it made the transition? I think I was around at that time.
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Okay. All right. I moved in 97, and I definitely remember seeing a couple shows on the courthouse lawn.
You're probably
and then I also remember
they had to shut down Lincoln
Avenue. I was the guy in the middle of the street with my pants down going,
yes, that guy right there.
You got to move this.
I have a quick story about our very first show. Robin Ford, I saw him, so he played the courthouse. He was our first show. So I went to a music convention years later, and I talked to him about it. So the stage was west, and then everybody is sitting here looking west, okay, where the Old Town Pub was. And so I asked him about the show. He said he was wearing a red jumpsuit, okay. Everybody in the audience was wearing sunglasses because of the sun. He said, I thought I was in a 3D movie. That's what he said, his first show, and he was awesome, of course.
Yeah, that's great. Now, of course, as the series has grown, as you mentioned, you've floated, Hallison's been the main home, but you have floated between the ski area and Hallison. Yeah. And some of the expectations have grown as well. You brought the plaque here that was kind of showing some of the achievements and the bands that have come over the years, and some of the names on here are unbelievable when you really look at it all. But as the expectations have grown, what are the challenges that have come along with that, over the years?
Well, the biggest challenge is obviously financial, as both talent along with the production needs. When people see all of the stage and the sound and the lights, and whether it's the portalettes or whatever it is out at the site, I don't think they really get an idea of how expensive it is to put a show on these days, compared to what Joe was saying, when you could do a show on the courthouse lawn for $5,000 or $4,000. Well, today, 10 times that, and that's before sometimes you even pay the talent. So, the audience out there, free doesn't mean it's free. And, if you go to the website of the Free Summer Concerts, feel free to donate, because that's what keeps it going.
Well, and I've said many times, I've always tried to say, it's a free concert only for the spectator. It's not free to put on. And especially with this year, there have been the challenges of 2 dates that have gotten some major rain on them. And what I don't think people understand is those days, you're still paying the talent, the security, the tents, the fencing. All of that is still built in, and your revenue is mostly off of beer sales. So.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say mostly, but a big chunk. And when you lose, a good portion. You lose 2 in a row, and it makes making it to the next year, which we will, but it makes it more challenging. And we've had a little bit of bad luck. Last 2 out of 3 years, we've had some rain. But then we went for a long period of time before that with really good weather. Yeah.
We hadn't hardly had, I think we had 1 or 2 rainouts, and like most of the time we were blessed. We had great weather at all the shows, not much rain for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes it happens.
And speaking of the donation page, I often tell people, just think of some of these acts that have come through, whether it's J.J. Gray or Michael Franti or, a Marley, name a Marley, any of these. How much would you have paid for a single ticket to see that person at a Red Rocks, and that donation for that one show that you would be paying for? If you kind of divide it over the many, many shows, it goes a long way for you guys, though, to get those donations.
It does. It's greatly appreciated. As you see, we've got corporate donors that are up on the stage, or the VIP tents and those type of things. But the individual donations also are hugely important. And we've been blessed in the last few years with Krill Silver from Steamboat Sticker has been one of our main presenting sponsors. And it's those kind of sponsorships that really keep the level of talent going as well. Yeah. So.
All the docs have been awesome. They've had tents with us for a long time. Chris Paoli.
Yeah.
They've been really good.
Partners.
Yeah.
Good partners with us.
Now, we see a lot of great names on this list, as I've said. And I always try to tell my kids not to dwell on the things that you don't have, appreciate the things that you do have. That said, I'm wondering, is there anyone that's not on that list that you were really close to getting, that you wish that you just, you almost pulled the trigger on, and then now they're big household names?
I have one.
Yeah, I have one also.
One is that I got a call at the last minute for Sheryl Crow to play on the courthouse lawn. And she had really gotten pretty big at that point, starting to blow up. So the agent calls me. I make him the offer. I'll be back to you in an hour. So I think the show is going to happen. Calls him back an hour later, says, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Right after I told you we needed this date and it looked like it was going to happen, she got an opportunity to Letterman. So, sorry. I never saw her after that, other than I did promote her in Vail a few times. And
Are you telling me that Steamboat Springs doesn't trump Letterman? Come on.
Exactly. True story. Though.
Jeez.
She had the opportunity to do
She
the
could have
top 10
accelerated that much quicker had she done the courthouse.
No.
Yep.
Well, one year we had a shot at Zach Brown. He was coming from Utah, and we had a great price on him, and he couldn't make the gig between Salt Lake and he's going to Kansas or Kansas City somewhere. I mean, he was just coming out with his first album, and it's like, God, that'd have been so great. Yeah. We had a few like that we just missed,
Just missed, but
yeah.
But the people that you have had have been amazing, and I kind of want to go around the table here and talk about kind of some of the best experiences that we've had. And I get the benefit of starting because I'm hosting, and I've had some amazing opportunities to have great memories from the concert series. Being a former MC of the event, I've gotten to meet a lot of the musicians, and many of them are so down to earth and so gracious and just great people. But for me, the concert that stands out the most was one that was done at the ski area. And I think this is for a lot of people. It was Michael Franti. And
you stole my thunder.
That's why I wanted to go first. It was Rainbow Weekend. You had the Rainbow people in town. Michael Franti on stage. It made for such a unique group of people in the crowd. And then a literal rainbow came over the stage as he's freestyle rapping about what's going on the field. And I'll never lose that memory. And at one point in time, I actually had a recording of that show because I think you guys agreed and Michael Franti agreed to let KFMU record that show. And I wish I could find that recording because it was unbelievable, that experience.
It was unbelievable. I will say that half the town of Steamboat probably was like, a rainbow over the stage? Are you freaking kidding me? These people are never going to leave.
It's a sign to stay in Steamboat.
Oh, man.
We've had rainbows over a lot of our shows.
Yeah.
Especially in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all through the years, it's like, it rains or drizzles or something, and then we get these awesome rainbows. So, I mean, happens a good bit here.
What about you, Dave? Do you have, other than that one, do you have?
I mean, I love the concerts as a whole. I could go on forever. The show's not that long. I will say just most recently, from more of the corporate standpoint, Billo's been doing some of those VIP tents, and we've turned it into like a customer appreciation party. And the feedback and the whole vibe, and even our own staff, because it's also kind of a reward for our own internal people. Man, what an incredible nuance to this series that you guys have created. And I don't know when that came to be, maybe 5 years ago or what have you, but from the corporate perspective, that is gold. And we've had a ton of fun hosting those VIP areas. So
we appreciate it because it sort of took us to the next level of sustainability financially, knowing that we had corporate partners like Billo.
Yeah.
So it's been really important.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done a little event production. I know that as you're the event producer, it's sometimes hard to truly enjoy the experience when you're worried about, is that plug supposed to be plugged in, or is the rain going to come? But are there certain concerts that stand out to you as exceptional experiences?
Yeah, a couple. One, Susan Tedeschi.
Yes.
Probably both times that she's played here. Before it was the Tedeschi Trucks Band when she was doing her own thing. Yeah. And then, to have Ziggy Marley playing here for free.
Those are the ones I was going to mention.
Are, really special shows. But there's been others as recently as 2 weekends ago or last weekend with ALO, who just were tight and just great and just a fun rock band. They were having a great time.
Yeah.
We got through some challenging weather, had to push back the show, but it ended up being a really magical show. So.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Yeah. Well, when we booked Ziggy Marley, we thought, okay, we'd have a good crowd and everything, but he was playing in Denver, $85 tickets, and somehow the word got out that he was playing with Steamboat. People from all over the state came to that show. It was just like, it was amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing what the Marley name can do, and especially Ziggy Marley.
Well,
People
it
all
just
over.
exploded, And I thought Grace Potter on her way up. We caught her just before. She was fabulous. She did a fabulous show. Trombone Shorty on his way up now he's kind of funky and jammy, but he did blues and then jazz. He was totally awesome.
Grace, that was another one that stands out to me, was the Grace Potter show, because we had, at the radio station, just started playing her, and I knew she had a set of lungs on her, but the way that she was belting out the notes during that show was unbelievable. And you and I recently were talking about just how Steamboat has had kind of a history of bringing up-and-coming bands. We were kind of talking about Dave Matthews playing the Inferno right before he was selling out Red Rocks and things like that. And what do you think it is about Steamboat that is bringing some of these people that want to play in this community and kind of get a little bit of a fan base here as they're on their way up?
I think there's a whole circuit. When I started in business, as I mentioned a while ago, we figured out that we could carve a niche in the mountain ski resort circuits. So we would do shows and take them. Dave Matthews is a good example. When he was first coming through, we took him through Steamboat, Aspen, Vail, Breckenridge, Jackson Hole. And so you develop this circuit. And so the bands will develop a fan base and start to grow. And then eventually, obviously, the next step for them is to be able to go down to Denver and play the Mission or that type of thing. And then if they really blow up, which today bands are blowing up quicker than ever with TikTok and social media and YouTube, the next thing you know, they're either playing Red Rocks or possibly Ball Arena.
From a booking perspective, does that bring an extra challenge with how quickly bands are blowing up and the different ways, instead of coming up in the traditional record label system, it's the social media world and everything else? Has that changed the way that you're trying to find bands?
Well, it does, because it happens so quickly and the price rises so quickly. So normally, as I said, you used to take a band from a club to maybe a ballroom at a hotel to a Gerald Ford in Vail, and then they would go bigger to Denver. Now they may go from that club to something larger in Denver right away. Look at Goose. Goose is a really good example. I mean, Goose, and we didn't do that show, but Sean did at the pub, and I think it was 2019. And the band was consistently still playing, clubs around the country. They were a Northeast band out of Boston area, wherever, Connecticut, I think. And, man, that thing is rocketed. They just did, Fiddler's Green, 18,000 people in June. And they have become, and Billy String, same thing, but very quickly.
Let's not forget Billy Strings.
Yeah,
we caught him. We just caught him at the perfect time. We paid not very much for him, and fabulous, and then he went crazy.
Yeah, of all the acts we've been talking about, if I think about it, that have played the series, Billy Strings, hands down, has become the biggest of them all.
And I'll just throw this in. My 2 cents is that I don't always know the bands intimately like you guys do when they're announced, but I try to make a habit to go to any show I possibly can for the very reason that I want to be able to tell that story 5 years, 10 years from now of saying, I saw X, Y, and Z at the Howelson Amphitheater, back before anyone really knew. So like you said a couple of times is, sometimes we'll catch these bands on their way up. And that's, to me, part of the fun of what you guys are creating at the concerts is that, man, these are bands that are going to go big or have in the past gone big.
We probably have had 24, maybe 36, not a lot of bands that played for us once or twice, and they're playing Red Rocks, they're playing Solda. We had so many bands that played for us to start this series. They were awesome, and then all of a sudden, a year later, they exploded, but we got them at a really good time and everything. So that's one of the things that John and our group always looks for, a band that's coming up that has enough recognition, and then they play and they're awesome, and they just say bye-bye, we're headed up.
Well, and of course, part of the balance too is you want great bands, but we all know that this is a community gathering. This is where, you know, I come to see the roommates that I kind of moved to town and lived with originally, and life has happened. We don't see each other as much, but we know we're going to catch up because we always sit in the same spot at the concert series. And there's so many of those stories. And so how does that play into the type of music and what you're bringing in town and, you know, just what you're trying to produce?
Well, in any given year, we may be heavy in one genre of music, but whatever it is, it's quality. So, you know, some years maybe we'd have 2 blues acts or 2 reggae acts or you know, 2 bluegrass acts. But it plays in because the biggest thing is quality. You just know the band is good.
We always look for the best talent that we can find.
Yeah, the best talent.
The best price.
And, you know, it's, as you just said, it's sort of the town meeting. Yeah. And so what you see, for those who've been out there, and I'm sure the people with families and kids may be in the middle of the venue. The people that want to see their buddies, or like you're talking about, may be at the beer tent. They're hanging and talking. They're listening, and then the people that are really want to see that band are in the pit. Yeah. And that's where the energy is. Yeah. If you go down there in a show that's really a hot show, you can feel electricity in the pit. Yeah. And the band feeds off of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what? One of the things that I've found is that people come to Steamboat to play and they don't always know what they're going to get. I remember Los Lobos came to Housen and they're like, okay, we're playing and stuff. So they play a number and people, all right, you know, they like go crazy. And then the band started going, wow. And it's like, you could just see it happen, the electricity, and they just like cranked it. And we see it so many times. Bands play and the energy that we give back to them makes them do an even better show. We've seen that a lot.
And the venue. I mean, that's the other thing. The band will comment about, you know, I was up there playing, and all of a sudden I looked out, and the sun was setting, and it was just amazing. Yeah. And so the venue itself, you know, we call it Howson Hill Amphitheater, and it's not a traditional amphitheater like Dillon or Gerald Ford or you know, or Red Rocks or anything, but it is beautiful, and it's natural, and the bands love it.
And I mean, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the amazing bands, the big names, but also one of the other things that the concert series has done really well is celebrating our local music scene, and that's something that you guys always try to bring local bands to play on the stage, where, you know, the Little Moon Travelers, or back in the day, Miss the Boat, or, you know, Old Town Pickers can say, yeah, we were on the same stage with some of our heroes. How is that, you know, why is that so important to you as the concert series to celebrate these local musicians?
Well, I think just supporting local music in general, and supporting, and we've been blessed with some, like you said, some great local acts, talented musicians that maybe if they didn't have a family or a regular day job, might be choosing to tour. And Little Moon Travelers do some touring now and whatever, but, you know, quality musicianship of our local bands has been really strong over the years with all the bands you just mentioned.
Yeah. Well, it's always my favorite part of the summer is the Summer Free Concert Series, and I think that even though there has been one of the biggest things that's changed over the last 30 years is there's also more competition out there for music in this town, whether it's free or paid. There's so many more opportunities, but I don't think there will ever be the thing that takes the place of the community gathering that the Free Concert Series is and has become. That said, we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges that have grown, and especially this year. So how does the concert series continue to evolve, and what are the next, when you guys are sitting down with me 30 some odd years from now, what is that going to look like?
Well, number one, we hope 32 years from now it's still going.
It's going to be all vinyl. It's going all the way back. 8 tracks.
Holograms.
You know, I think it's going to need continued funding. I mean, that it is. And that's the biggest challenge that we face is the financial piece. Because costs will continue to go up for production. Costs of bands will continue to go up. So you have to continually fundraise and finding mechanisms that give you some security. The city has been very supportive of us from pretty much from the start, and they continue to be. And that's an important piece, along with the concessions, along with our corporate partners like Billo, and individual sponsors as well, and the stage banner sponsors and such. So we need to continue to raise simply more money every year to keep up.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
I'll say this, John is a genius at finding great bands at a great price, coming through one-offs. However, I mean, we've gotten bands, and I'm going, God, how'd you get those guys at that price? That's so awesome. So he really looks and hunts and finds real gems for us, and we don't always know. I mean, it's a game you play out. Okay, we're going to put an offer in on this one, and oh no, they can't do it, so we go to this one. One year, Susan Tedeschi, we had an offer in February, and she said no, and then it's like all of a sudden May pops up. I'm going, she's available. Let's book her. It just happens like that a lot.
I think that also goes to another thing that a lot of people maybe don't understand about the series is, well in advance, you kind of have to go to the city and say, these are the dates we're trying to fill. But that doesn't always mean that the musician that you want is going to be available on that date. And you can't just go back and say, well, we want to do it on Wednesday because the Rolling Stones are going to come play on Wednesday. Maybe the city would make an exception for something like that. But, if your dream band could come, but it's not the date that works there that you've already kind of set aside, that also has to play into the scheduling a little bit.
Yeah, it's a puzzle.
Yeah.
It is. It's a puzzle, and you start with your first confirmed artist, and then, as Joe just said, maybe you make some other offers, and they turn you down, so then you go to the next group. And it's mix and match. It's changed a little bit in that because of all the venues in Colorado and the music scene in Colorado, the booking is happening further and further in advance. When we first started, we could sort of wait until spring at some point, as late as maybe May, to see if something popped up to fill that last show and not be too worried about it. We're now, because of corporate budgets and our sponsors' budgets working out how they work, as well as I was just saying, the booking of all these venues and the holds that agents and managers put down on venues well in advance. You have to start making your offers. For next summer, we'll be making offers as early as fall or midwinter for sure, to make sure we've got the lineup ready to go, because our dates are being put on hold for next year pretty much right after our last show coming up with Keller Williams, Grateful Grass. So
can I ask real quick, just a little, look behind the curtain? So you guys do roughly 5-6 shows a summer anymore. I mean, it varies. How many names are on the list in the fall? What do you start with? 30? Less?
Probably almost more than that.
More,
We have
yeah.
a wish list. Everybody has a wish list, okay?
Yeah, the concert committee is
Yeah.
part of the organization, and they, as Joe said, they come to it.
Do you get some serious lobbying going on, or is it solved over a couple of highballs, and
It's solved over a couple of beers and what's No, it's just an ongoing process, and sometimes a name will come up that's really exciting, and sometimes it happens, but when it doesn't, it kind of breaks your heart. It's like, oh man, are you kidding me? Really? Because you think the agent isn't lying to you. It looks like this has a good shot of happening, and you get really excited, But the flip side too is that sometimes you get that call, and it's like, hey, normally we're asking $50,000 for this act. I've got a hole here, I can do it for such and such, or can just get me a little more money, and we can make it happen, and it does, and you're like, wow, great. So it can go both ways.
Bruce Hornsby, that was a good example.
Yeah.
It's like it just happens sometimes.
And Bruce had to, I don't know if people remember this, but Bruce had to cancel the night before, the first time he was booked, lost his voice. But Bruce is a really nice guy. And I'd booked him a few times, more than a few times in my career, and got to know him. He's always been a really nice guy. And not all artists will do this, or managers of artists will do this, but when he came back, he discounted the price because two reasons. One, he felt bad about having to cancel, and number two, he realized the night before means all our marketing was already spent. The stage was already ready on its way or probably set up at that point. There were expenses that we couldn't pull back in. So he reduced his price when he did come so that we could recoup some of those expenses the next year.
I think you see that too with some of the musicians that do come play and they're not playing to a ticketed audience. We talked a little bit about it. They feel or feed off the energy of the crowd, but they'll mention too what an amazing experience it is to play at this free venue, and at just as much as they're playing to the guys in the pit, they're introducing their music to the people who are just coming for the community gathering, and it's such an incredible part of our community. I've always said it's my favorite thing that happens in Steamboat year-round.
And visitors that maybe aren't even familiar with the series and the first time to Steamboat, and they hear about it, they go to the concierge wherever they're staying. Oh, there's a free show down in Halston. Well, who's playing? And they tell them the name, and they go, well, how much does it cost? And they go, it doesn't cost anything. They go, it's free?
Yeah.
And they go, and they're like amazed. They're like, you have this in your community. So it's special.
Yeah. And I think that part of what we do here with this podcast is highlight the people that, I see you walking around the concert venue, and I'd say 99% of the people probably don't recognize that the two of you are the people that created this, that's the reason.
Me.
They recognize you. It's hard not to, Joe.
Once they hear your voice.
Just to give me one all that. Yeah.
John's the incognito guy. Okay.
Yeah. But, I think it just goes to show, like, the common folk in Steamboat, and especially from 30 plus years ago, what you guys created and how it has built into this massive part of our culture and our community. So
I appreciate it.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great thing. We love it, and just one more thing real quick. Everybody that comes to the committee has a passion for music. So it's like they're all in, they want to help do what they can and everything. So the committee has always been great because it's always been music people.
Yeah, and to expound on that a little bit, Joe and I started it, but as it grew and evolved into a 501c3, it started a board. And on that board, we have various committees. Yeah. And everybody in there, as a whole, puts in a ton of time, volunteer time, whether it's the development committee, finance, production, talent, whatever it is. So this whole event can't run with their year-long commitment because there's really not a break through the year. Meet once a month throughout the year. And then we have various fundraisers and budget retreats and those type of things. So it's a big commitment, but as Joe just said, everybody involved has a passion for music. Yeah. And that's why they're giving of their time. Yeah. And they see how important it is for the community as well.
Well, I have to say that I'm happy that your cousin lived here and you visited for a few weeks. I'm happy that your car broke down because it certainly helped us out in the long run.
You're leaving me out. You're not happy I'm here? Thanks a lot.
Right. Now, I'm happy you're here as well. But I also do want to implore that anybody who wants to see this series continue to flourish and continue to bring these big names, go to keepingitfree.com, donate, whether it's $10, $25, or more. There's lots of ways to make sure that this series can keep going.
Or come early and buy a beer at the next show because we've had some rain.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got a longer window with the Labor Day
We do. Well, yeah, so. Keller's going to be doing 2 sets. And Little Mood Travelers, who are beloved in town right now, will be opening. So, yeah, come out early and celebrate the last show. We call it our end of summer jams.
Yep. Little Moon Travelers, Keller Williams, Hillbenders, Grateful Grass. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sunday, September 1st.
Yep. So. Gates open at 5, which is 30 minutes earlier than normal.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you,
the
guys.
common folk in the boat.